Please hold. We're still trying to get the live.
Welcome. Welcome to the Houston Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Physical and Mental Health Committee, Life Matters Series, Shine a Light on Domestic Violence Behind the White Picket Fence. Before we get started, we will have a safety briefing from Ms. Alicia Washington.
Please unmute your mic.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to share a few safety reminders. Always try to remain calm during an emergency. Make sure you have adequate lighting, clear walkways, and are aware of all exits at your location. Ensure that ovens and stoves are turned off or are being attended to by someone other than you. If using a headset to listen this evening, please make sure that you can still hear the fire alarm if activated. Lastly, if you need to dial 911, please remember to provide a physical location for your location, a physical address, for your location. This concludes the safety briefing. Dr. Anitra Piper, our chapter president, will now bring the welcome.
Hello, I am Dr. Anitra Piper, president of the Houston Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Welcome to our webinar entitled Life Matters, Shine a Light on Domestic Violence Behind the White Picket Fence. Shining a light on domestic violence is important for several critical reasons. One, it breaks the silence and stigma where survivors feel safe coming forward to get help. Two, it educates the public so that you fully understand what domestic violence looks like. Three, it empowers survivors to seek support and justice. Four, it promotes prevention and teaches people about healthy relationships. It drives public policy and support services, which can bring funding and legal protection. It holds abusers accountable so they know that there are consequences for their actions, and it saves lives. In short, shining a light on domestic violence isn't just about awareness, it's about changing the culture, saving lives, and building a society where everyone feels safe in their own home. Thank you for attending this important webinar.
Thank you, President Piper, for your greetings and all of your important information that you've shared. My name is Marquita Johnson, co-chair of the Physical and Mental Health Committee at Houston Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Thank you for joining our Life Matters series, part 2, Shine a Light on Domestic Violence Behind the White Picket Fence. About 1 in 3 women, 30% worldwide, will experience domestic violence by an intimate partner or non-intimate partner in their lifetime. Men can also be victims. 1 out of 9 men in the US report experiencing severe physical violence, stalking, or sexual violence from an intimate partner. And more than 40% of Black women and only 35% of Black men in the US experience domestic violence in their lifetime. Today, we have an amazing speakers who are going to share with us resources, next steps, and ways you can help anyone in your life who has experienced domestic violence or is trying to end the cycle of domestic violence in their family. Our first speaker for our series is Ms. Martine Desmolieres. Ms. Martine is a survivor, a speaker, and an advocate for those in her life who has experienced domestic violence, and she is an inspiration for healing, awareness, and change. She understands the power of resilience and the importance of creating safe spaces for others to thrive. As a wife, a mother of 4, Martine leads with compassion and purpose. Through our organization, or her organization, Voices Restored and Going Out Divine, she equips communities, corporations, and survivors with the tools to recognize abuse, to rebuild confidence, and to restore dignity. Her mission is to break generational cycles and ignite transformation that lasts. Please welcome Ms. Martine.
Thank you so much, Ms. Johnson, for having me tonight. And thank you, Dr. Piper, for having me and all of the Delta Soros and organizers of tonight's webinar. As Marquita stated, my name is Martine Desmolieres. I am the founder of Going Out Divine and Voices Restored, and I am also a survivor of domestic violence. And before I start my presentation, I want to state that I am not a therapist, a counselor, or a medical professional. I am a survivor, simply sharing my perspective. And my goal tonight is to educate, empower, and remind every woman listening tonight that healing is possible. The subject tonight is Life Matters, Shine a Light on Domestic Violence Behind the White Picket Fence. So when we hear the phrase white picket fence, most people think it's a picture perfect life, it's full of peace, it's a happy family, the common or the American dream, right? But behind every white picket fence, sometimes there is that we don't talk about. There's situations that people are experiencing that they are not willing to share. They're in silence regarding domestic violence and not willing to share the silent pain that they're enduring. So what is domestic violence? Domestic violence is a pattern of behaviors that someone uses to gain and maintain power and control over another person in a relationship. It can happen to anyone, regardless of your gender, your race, your socioeconomic background, your education, and it's not always visible, right? Sometimes it's hidden behind people's titles, careers, and it's not about love, it's about control. So when we talk about the different forms of domestic violence, there's physical, emotional, financial, verbal, psychological, and digital abuse. These are some of the most common types of domestic violence. And physical abuse is usually the first thing that people always assume that domestic violence falls under, right? But there's different forms. So physical abuse includes hitting, slapping, pushing, choking. It could be restraining someone from exiting a room. It could be the utilization of weapons. And it could also be shoving. So emotional and psychological abuse is name calling, right? That's the humiliation, the constant criticism, the threats, intimidation, isolating someone from their friends and family. Financial abuse involves controlling your money, preventing you from working or school. So sometimes what happens is perpetrators will try to sabotage you in your workplace, or you end up having to call out a lot because of the abuse that you're enduring at home. It could be constant control of your funds, where you have your paycheck, the money that you worked hard to earn, and the person's controlling how you spend it. They don't give you access to the funds, whether it's your checking or your savings account, your debit cards, your credit cards, or they could be running up debt in your name. Now, we also have verbal abuse, which is yelling, screaming, insults, right? All types of names that is not your own name, right? It could also be gaslighting, which is making you question your reality, right? Are you actually thinking this is correct? And they're making you feel like you're going crazy when you know it's factual, right? They're making you feel like you're the one in the wrong. Constant put downs, things that constantly make you want to question and doubt yourself. And over time, it erodes your self-esteem. We also have sexual abuse, which I don't have it listed here, but I do want to tackle that as well. It's forcing sex on someone, right? Pressuring them into sexual acts. No means no. So when someone says no and the person still continues to um, move forward with the sexual act, that is a form of sexual abuse. It could be also not wanting to use condoms if you want to use condoms to protect yourself and your health, right? And it could also be forcing you to have abortions or preventing you from taking birth control or other contraceptive methods, right? And also it could be just knowing that they're putting your health in jeopardy because they may not be in a healthy manner, but they are forcing you to have sex in any kind of way. Digital abuse is another form of abuse, which is monitoring your text messages, your social media, demanding your passwords, using GPS to track you. They want you to always share your location. That is a form of control and digital abuse. And we also have spiritual abuse, which is a use of religion or spiritual beliefs to control you, manipulate, using biblical scripture sometimes to try to twist it around to get their way, and misusing other doctrines to try to harm you. There's also intimate partner violence, also known as IPV. Now, the difference between intimate partner violence and domestic violence is that this relates to romantic partners, whereas domestic violence focuses mostly on people within your family, in your home, your roommates, right? And intimate partner violence is for romantic partners specifically, whether dating or living together or married sometimes. And so that is the most common form of domestic violence. So 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men will experience DV in their lifetime, according to the CDC. 10 million plus people are affected annually. 43% are usually young adults. That's between the ages of 18 to 24 years old. And right here in the state of Texas, we have the state ranking at the top 10 with the most DV deaths, right? And so these are not just numbers or stats, right? These are your family, your friends, your sisters, your brothers, your nieces, your nephews. And I want you to just take a look at some of these statistics on the board here. So there's 3 times the amount of Black women are more likely to die from domestic violence than white women. And every 9 seconds, a woman is assaulted here in America. So pay attention to the signs and don't just look at the numbers, but as we go through the information, we want you guys to become more aware and empowered so that you can notice the red flags. Now we're going to talk about generational trauma. When it comes to generational trauma, it's something that can be passed down through behavior, through emotions within your family. Trauma, right? It could be biological trauma that goes across through generations. It's inherited pain. It's survival mode, right? And so these are patterns that we learn growing up, right? And sometimes we don't necessarily have the proper tools in our toolbox to train to raise our children properly, and sometimes they end up learning things that behaviors that they shouldn't learn, right? So the pain that you thought you may have left behind, your children will end up carrying it forward, right? If you don't heal the trauma that you experience. And trauma, the thing with trauma, you have no control of when it shows up, right? So if you don't deal with it, right, it could show up at any point. It doesn't need permission. And we need to make sure that we stop and take the time to heal. And so when someone in their family has lived through abuse or violence, it could be your grandmother, it could be your mother, right? Maybe it may be you. But if it doesn't just disappear. I want you guys to understand that it doesn't just disappear. It's the situation, when the situation ends, you have to go through the motions in the healing journey, right? So sometimes trauma can look like, I don't need anyone, right? You may feel that hyper independence where you just feel like you're good by all by yourself. Or it could look like silence, or you just don't talk about anything negative or anything that may have happened to you in the past, or your parents or your family may not want to talk about it. Culturally, we've heard some things like what goes on in this house stays in this house. And so we need to get away from that, right? We need to start talking more and having these type of discussions and to talk about domestic violence, normalizing it around the table, because silence is a killer. So when you talk about the ripple effects of trauma, right? When it becomes a pattern, when chaos becomes a curriculum, we are as parents, right? If you are a parent, your children learn from you. They are witnesses to different things that go on in the home, right? So we need to exemplify what a healthy relationship looks like. So if a child witnesses verbal or physical abuse, they're more likely to become victims or perpetrators when they become older. And when a child grows up around domestic violence, they're not just seeing arguments, they're learning what love looks like through that chaos, right? So that's why it's so important for us to be good examples. So if a little girl is watching her mom being hit or yelled at, belittled, she learns very early, right, that love might come in a form of pain. And if a little boy sees his father controlling or disrespecting his mother, he might grow up thinking that that's how he should prove that he's a man, or that he should prove that he's in charge. And as I mentioned before, these are just the tools that we have in our toolbox. And sometimes our parents may have not realized, or grandparents, whoever it may be that raised us, may not have realized that the way they were raising us was wrong. And it's not intentional, it's just learned, right? It's learned behavior, and it's passed down if we don't fix it and have these discussions and heal properly. But the good news is that it can be broken, right? The cycles, the patterns, the learned behavior that wasn't so good, it can be broken, because that kind of pain is taught, but healing can be taught too. Now we want to talk about healthy versus unhealthy love and modeling what that looks like. So you may have children or nieces, nephews, whoever it may be, that are in elementary school, middle school, or high school. And so we want to make sure that we have these conversations early on, and have the conversations that are child friendly or age friendly for them, right? So have the conversations around the dinner table, in group discussion, in girls groups, at your churches, at your schools. And it starts at home, right? So we want to make sure that we tell our girls or our sons that this type of behavior is not okay. We want to show them what real healthy love truly looks like, and what respect should look like. And we want to talk to them about the red flags. We want to show them how to recognize healthy versus unhealthy. We want to teach them how to break the cycle early on. And why does it matter, right? So let me give you guys a few more stats. We have nearly 60% of Black women have experienced some form of physical, sexual, or psychological abuse by an intimate partner before the age of 18. And studies show Black girls ages between 14 and 18 are among the highest at risk for dating violence, but they are the least likely to receive services or counseling. Black girls are most likely to be punished or criminalized for defending themselves instead of being seen as victims. So in some school surveys, 1 in 5 Black teen girls reported being hit or slapped or physically hurt in some kind of way. All right. So domestic violence should not be the worst kept secret in our families. We need to normalize these conversations. We need to talk about it. We need to be good role models for our children. We need to share our stories if we have stories, but again, make sure it's age appropriate and share the parts that they're prepared to hear, right? You know your children best or your family members best. And we want to make sure that we empower them, teaching them healthy boundaries. So when you talk to your young girls or your young boys, you want to make sure that they know what healthy love feels like, that it feels like safety, it feels calm, it feels respectful, right? And you want to make sure that being able to say no without being punished, right? You want them to understand that if they say no, it should not look like punishment, and feeling free to have your own goals, your own friends, your own opinions, and someone who apologizes when they're wrong. That's what a healthy relationship looks like. Someone who celebrates your growth, right? And not compete with you. That's so important. Someone who protects your peace and not your silence. So unhealthy love, these are some points regarding unhealthy love. It makes you afraid to speak up. It keeps you silent. It forces you to shrink and not, you don't feel love. It feels unpredictable. You feel like you're walking or having to walk on eggshells all the time. The person might be calm one day, and then the next day there's a lot of chaos. Love should not leave you confused, right? It should not make you feel exhausted. It should not make you feel like you have to constantly apologize and like it's not worth, like your life is not worth living, right? You are worth it. You are worthy. You want them to know that they're beautiful and that they deserve love. So how can you help someone you love, right? So we talk about empathy, safety, consistency, and privacy. So if someone comes to you and shares that they are in a abusive relationship and they feel unsafe, you want to make sure that you're actively listening first and foremost. You want them to understand that you empathize and that you validate their experience without judgment, and that you share with them that that's not something that they deserve. You don't want to rush the process, right? Because when someone is in an abusive relationship, when it's time for them to leave, that is the most dangerous time. So you want to make sure you have a safety plan that they have to prepare to leave. It might not be that day. It might not be that week, right? You just have to build out a safety plan. And sometimes it could take months. It depends on what this safety plan looks like. And it's tailored and different for everyone based on their situation, because every domestic violence situation is different. And you want to make sure that you're supportive as a friend. I would say that if you do have a friend that is in an abusive relationship, you want to build a code word. So the code word could be butterfly. So if my friend calls me and says butterfly, I know that I need to call 911 or I need to hurry up and get over there, because that means that she's in danger and that she needs help. Or it could be a he, right? So just make sure that you build these code words, you have a safety plan, you empathize without judging, and you're listening actively. Now, stay consistent. Isolation fuels control. You want to make sure that you keep showing up and that you're present. And I do understand that sometimes it could be exhausting for some people, because you're having to have these same conversations repeatedly where the individual is not ready to leave, right? And that's okay, because they have to make the decision for themselves. They have to be ready to exit when they feel that it's the right time. There could be various factors where children may be involved. It could be a financial situation where they're depending on the other person financially. So you just want to make sure that you stay consistent. If you don't hear from them, you call them, you text them, check on them, right? Because you never know, the abuser could be forcing the isolation, or sometimes it could be depression, or it's learned behavior. They've been taught to be isolated for so long, it's just become so normal and natural that they don't even think to check in or contact anyone just to have a conversation. So be present. And I do want to add that even after the transition period, you want to make sure that you stay present even then, right? Because these behaviors still can continue. Depression can come forward, right? As well as isolation. Like I said, they're so used to being isolated, they will continue to isolate themselves even after they leave their abuser. So stay present, stay consistent, help them throughout the transition process as they pick up the pieces and rebuild their lives. And we want to make sure that we offer practical support. So if someone needs a ride, if you're willing to and able to give a ride, give them a ride to the doctors or give them a ride to work. Donate your time, donate some money if you can, provide childcare. Maybe they just need a mental break, a mental health break, and they have children that they're always around. They don't get any time for themselves. Maybe that you can just babysit, right? So there's just different ways that you can help someone who is in an abusive situation. It's just a matter of having that conversation and finding out what the need is. And you want to respect privacy. So if someone shares that they are in an abusive relationship, you never want to confront the abuser. Act like you know nothing, because you can definitely put them in a tough spot and make their situation worse. And you don't bring it up unless they bring it up to you. All right, so behind the picket fence. So I want you guys to just be aware that abuse is not always obvious. Domestic violence doesn't look the same in every situation. It doesn't have a face to it. It doesn't have a name to it. And it could be the most well-polished person. I know for me as a survivor, I hid it well. I hid my scars, my bruises well. And even when I couldn't hide my scratches and bruises, I lied about it, right? To colleagues that would ask me and friends. And I would say, oh, my baby scratched me. You know how it is when they're young, they have long nails and I just have to trim his nails. You know, I hid it very well. Friends and family barely knew what was going on. And so you have to just notice some of the red flags. Does this person go missing from time to time? Do you notice that they are afraid when they're around their abuser? Are you noticing any signs of disrespect? Just pay attention to the cues and have conversations. Sometimes if you just have these type of conversations and say, hey, today I learned about domestic violence and this is what I learned, and you'll be surprised of what comes up in these conversations. But healing begins when we break the silence. All right, so this brings me to the end of my presentation. I just want to share one more time that I am the founder of Going Out Divine, and we are working toward breaking generational cycles, domestic violence through education, empowerment, and outreach. And we also have a teen girls program that we're getting ready to launch. I have my QR code here. You could find us by scanning QR code, all of our contact information, financially, however way you want to give back, we would so greatly appreciate it. Our website is www.goingoutdivine.org, and you can find me on Instagram at I am Martine D or at Going Out Divine. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Martine, for your information. It was amazing. Something you said that was so just shocking is chaos becoming a curriculum. And I think that is super imperative to point out that the children are learning how to love, how to be in a relationship. And we really want to think about what we're teaching them and showing children what real healthy love looks like. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Our second speaker for our series is Vincitska Wright. She's a dedicated educator and licensed professional counselor with over 20 years of experience empowering individuals to reach their highest potential. With a strong background in teaching, advanced academics, counseling, and leadership, she brings a dynamic blend of expertise to her work in mental health and education. Vincitska currently serves as the Director of School-Based Services at Clear Hope Counseling and Wellness, founder of Helping Hearts Heal, and an adjunct professor where she continues to inspire growth, resilience, and emotional well-being in adolescents and women. Her approach is warm, empowering, and non-judgmental, drawing on her training in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy through Gottman Level 1, and trauma-informed resilience-focused care to help clients heal, connect, and thrive. Thank you, Ms. Wright.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to the Houston Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta for allowing me to be here tonight. Good evening. My name is Vincenskia Wright, and I am a licensed professional counselor. I particularly work with youth and women, and one of my main focuses as a counselor is to stay trauma informed. So let's start with the definition of what trauma really is. Trauma is an individual's deeply distressing experience where they have been significantly impacted mentally, emotionally, and physically. So much so that they were in fear for their life, and that experience left them feeling hopeless and helpless. Domestic violence is a situation that can definitely lead to trauma, especially from generation to generation. Just like Martine stated, our chaos can become the lesson. And when our youth witness it or find themselves involved in it, teen dating violence situations, it can increase their susceptibility to even more experiences of domestic violence and insecure attachments. And when the process of healing isn't available, it can just reiterate that perpetuation of violence. So I'm going to reiterate a few of the topics that Martine brought up tonight and specifically highlight the impacts of domestic violence among teens and youth from a parent perspective. We're going to review those manipulation tactics as it appears from a youth's point of view and make sure that we all are aware of warning signs and ways to remain patient to help our youth at risk or involved in teen dating violence to be able to seek out the help that they need themselves. So first, we're going to start with some trends. This was a survey conducted by the CDC in 2021 at the height of COVID. And during this time, we can assume that many of our kids' social interactions had decreased. However, during this time, we saw high schoolers who reported that they were dating at the time that 8.5% of them had experienced physical teen dating violence. At that time, also 9.7% of them experienced sexual teen dating violence. And when we look at the data overall for that year, those same students, about 13.6% of them experienced any or some teen dating violence, and 3.6% experienced both. And what we've learned since COVID is that sexual teen dating violence actually increased during this time. So, albeit there is no one particular report that describes locations for where this violence occurs. But according to the US Department of Education, more than 19,000 incidents of rape, attempted assault, occurred in schools or school sponsored events during this same year. Now, according to the Texas Youth Risk Behavior Survey from 2023, just from the state of Texas, 1 out of 9 Texas high schoolers have experienced physical teen dating violence, and 1 out of 20 have experienced sexual teen dating violence. And in addition, studies show that about 59% of US teens have experienced some form of abuse, including online abuse, harassment, digital stalking, and pressure to share illicit content. So let's look again at the types of dating violence that youth may experience. So first, there's physical violence. It could entail hitting, kicking, shoving, restraining in an attempt to control. But among teens, these behaviors can be normalized, and it can be normalized as joking or playing around. But we have to educate our youth to let them know that they have to expect others to respect their own personal space and their personal beings. Then there's sexual violence, which is forcing or attempting to force sex or sexual contact, even with pressure. And remember, teens can't consent. Next, there's psychological or emotional aggression. And these are behaviors that are used to harm someone's self worth, such as insults, threats, humiliation, isolation. And one thing to remember is when an abuser harms their victim, the victim doesn't stop loving the abuser. They stop loving themselves. And this continues that perpetuation of the cycle of violence. Next is digital abuse, tracking somebody's location. I have to share my location, excessive texting or calling, monitoring social media activity, demanding passwords, spreading rumors through social media. And finally, that financial abuse, that withholding of funds or stopping or preventing somebody from going to school are all types of teen dating violence. So we have to teach our youth about healthy and unhealthy relationships and the impact of how unhealthy relationships, especially those that involve disrespect, hurtful communication, dishonesty, control, and isolation, can put them at more risk for mental health challenges, as well as these challenges can be risk factors for being in relationships where teen dating violence can occur. So some of these challenges include depression, anxiety, PTSD or post traumatic disorder, suicidal thoughts, such that if I don't wake up in the morning, that would be okay. And just a quick caveat, suicide is the second leading cause of death for youths ages 10 to 24. And there have been a 19% increase among Black populations, especially between ages 10 to 24 and 25 to 44. Now, these numbers do not describe correlation or causation to domestic abuse directly, but I do want to point it out because we still need to help reduce the stigma of both suicide and domestic violence. So then we also have self harm or non suicidal self injury. And that occurs when a person is not wanting to complete suicide, but they're not able to verbally express intense emotions related to abuse. And so they physically harm themselves to release those emotions. There's substance use, eating related problems, binge eating or not eating at all, sleep disturbances, inability to focus at school, and continuing that digital abuse all on their own. So, to help teens recognize the signs of unhealthy relationships, we have to educate on the beginnings of psychological and emotional toxicity. And they generally start with manipulation tactics such as guilt, gaslighting, and pressure. So remember that with manipulation comes aggression, emotional avoidance, and an imbalance of power and control. So guilt will make someone feel as if they are responsible for another person's behaviors. And you may hear statements like, if you don't send me that pic, I'll find someone else who will. Don't you trust me? And gaslighting is when someone can make you feel that you're insane. They can make you question your own sanity, memories, and your own ability to reason. And you may hear them say things as, you're just being dramatic. You're always twisting my words. I'm sorry you feel that way. And then finally, pressure, which can be extremely oppressive during teen years when a youth's judgment and rationality are not fully conceived. Statements such as, if you really love me, you spend your time with me instead of with your friends. It's so important to educate on these types of manipulation tactics because we're dealing with individuals whose prefrontal cortexes or the thinking parts of their brains have not fully formed yet. So their decision making can often be irrational and based off of emotion, especially when they're not educated on facts. And this generation is a lot more emotionally aware than past generations, which can lead to more susceptibility to acting on those emotions. So, here are some warning signs or those red flags that a youth you love and care about might be in an unhealthy or even teen dating violence situation. So you may see extreme jealousy, which can be seen as love bombing. So they start saying, I love you within a week's time, or they start FaceTiming or asking to FaceTime when you go from class to class, just so I can see where you are. They're willing to break rules because they miss the other person so much, or they're giving out their schedules just so that the other partner knows exactly where they are during the day. You may see unexplained bruises, They may have a decreased interest in things that they once loved to do. Isolation, sudden changes in how they dress or groom themselves. And you may notice abusive behavior from the partner when they are around. And so finally, let's remember to be patient with our loved ones by one, being aware of what a trauma bond is. And so there are a few misconceptions around the term. A trauma bond is not bonding with someone over a shared experience of trauma. That's bonding over trauma. A trauma bond is a really complex psychological attachment that develops between a victim and the perpetrator. It's characterized by an abuser alternating periods of abuse with times of extreme affection and remorse. And there's an emotional attachment for lots of different reasons. The victim will justify the abuse from the perpetrator. There's a system of control that leads to intense emotions of fear and helplessness. And then there's a feeling of being trapped due to having intense feelings of guilt and shame just from being in the situation in the first place. So we have to come from a place of empathy and not judgment to help our youth understand what's happening to them and around them in unhealthy relationships. The better we connect and affirm at home, the less likely they are to attach to someone else for validation. We have to help them understand how some of our current societal norms project very unhealthy relationship culture, and that leads to a lot of digital abuse. So you will have kids who create accounts where they can call someone over and over and over and over again, harassing them. They want each other's passwords to their social media platforms. They want to make sure that you're sharing your location because that's how I'm able to trust you. But these are very intrusive behaviors and they often can be very dangerous. We have to listen and give support, avoid victim blaming and shaming, and accept what our children are telling us. We can't dismiss it or just claim that they're being dramatic. We've got to show concern, be curious, pay attention to the warning signs, as they are often silent cries for help. And finally, we have to avoid ultimatums and encourage therapy. It's often very hard for someone to admit that they need help, but we have to continue to encourage therapeutic support by modeling it for ourselves. And remember, therapy can come in lots of different forms. It could be taking a walk, meditation, working out. And be sure to utilize your insurance benefits to find a culturally responsive therapist to help guide yourself and your team to self awareness and healing. It can be just as traumatic to witness someone else's trauma. And remember, you have to put your oxygen mask on first. So, here are just a few hotlines to provide you and your youth to begin their healing journey. The first one is loveisrespect.org. This is one of my favorite resources. It's a great website where youth and adults can start just by taking a quiz to see if their current relationship is healthy or not. And it also provides resources to evaluate your situations and gives you step by step plans on how you can seek help. Next is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. If a teen is in need of support, they can help offer ways out. And lastly is 988. If a teen is having a mental health challenge that could be related to a teen domestic violence situation, it's better to call 988 for that mental health crisis than 911, because when you call 988, you get a mental health professional who can help guide and de-escalate the situation while providing necessary next steps and resources to keep your loved ones safe. So, thank you all so much for the time to grow your knowledge and learn how to support someone going through a domestic violence situation or teen dating violence situation. This was a very brief overview, but hopefully you continue this conversation in your homes. We've got to do so much more to reduce the stigma of shame and guilt surrounding teen dating violence and domestic violence overall. Thank you so much for your time. And if you have any additional questions, or if I can be of any assistance with guiding parents or youth out of these traumatic situations, I am happy to help. I can be reached at either of these email addresses that are on your screen. You could call or text me or even scan the QR code for a direct link to my scheduling site. Thank you all so much for your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wright. That was amazing. One of the things you said that was super imperative that I want to reiterate is 1 out of 9 Texas teens will experience some form of physical violence, intimate partner violence, domestic violence. So we need to watch over our babies, and teens cannot consent. So let's repeat, teens cannot consent. So thank you so much for that information. And just want to remind everyone who is on our webinar tonight and who is on Facebook Live that please participate. If you have any questions for our speakers so far, please drop them in the chat. Please put them on Facebook Live. Please send a reaction and a heart to let us know how this webinar is informing you and kind of giving you more tools for next steps on how to help someone who's experienced domestic violence. And so we're going to transition now into thinking about how we can provide help in other ways. We've talked about emotional support, resources, hotlines. And so we're going to move into more of our judicial system, because we know sometimes in domestic violence situations, what will happen is these victims will end up talking with judges and the cops and different forms in the community that work with our judicial team to help these families. So before we get started, I just wanted to provide this resource, the League of Women Voters. It's a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization in the United States, and it encourages us to be an informed and active participant in our government. It was founded in 1920, and the League of Women Voters just allows women to have access to who is on our ballot, what judges are on our ballot, who are we voting for, and what is their stance on protecting people against domestic violence. And so we are encouraging everyone to click on this link. The link will also be placed in the chat so that you can be aware of what who is running for government for our upcoming election. We know that early voting started on October 20th. So we want to make sure that you're aware of who is on your ballot. So when you are voting, you know, does this person really support and advocate for men and women who are experiencing domestic violence? So we will put that link in the chat, and we encourage you to research the ballot in your own community. And so it's important that we know who our judges are, our representatives are. So tonight we have a family judge, and we have a Harris County District Attorney's Office representative of the Domestic Violence Bureau. But before we get started, our third speaker will be Lillian Alexander, who was born in Houston, Texas, graduated from Louisiana State University. Lillian is a 2011 graduate of Thurgood Marshall School of Law, and as a family law attorney, she has been nominated to the list of top women family lawyers in Texas. And she has handled hundreds of family law cases in Harris County to support families throughout domestic violence situations. So thank you, Lillian.
Thank you so much. My name is Judge Lillian Alexander, and I am just grateful to the Houston Alumni Chapter for having me here tonight. I am the presiding judge of the 507th Family District Court here in Harris County. I was elected to that bench, and this court hears divorce, child support, conservatorship, adoption, termination, and we navigate issues that are in the best interest of the children. And while I cannot offer legal advice, I can share from the bench what judges look for when families come to the court seeking safety, and how the law can help protect both parents and the children when the love turns unsafe. Many parents stay in abusive relationships out of fear of losing the home, fear of disrupting stability, or of not being able to provide for their children. And the truth is that the law does give you tools to protect safety and your children's security at the same time. So when a parent decides to leave, the court can issue temporary orders that create a structure and protection right away. Temporary spousal maintenance to cover immediate financial needs, temporary child support, temporary exclusive use of the home so that the victim and the children can stay safely in their environment, as well as protective injunctions to prohibit contact and threats. These injunctions really come to mind when people are wanting to navigate still allowing their child to possibly have visitation, but knowing that it's unsafe for the pickup and drop-offs, or a child being groomed into discussing litigation. These injunctions will go a long way. These orders exist so that no one has to choose between a dangerous situation and destitution. They keep the household stable while the larger issues are being resolved. So when a case comes before me, I look for evidence that helps the court understand risk and safety. Things like police, medical reports, photos, text messages, testimony from witnesses. Bring your family members, proof or that one parent has taken steps to protect the child and maintain the children's routines. I also look for things like a documented pattern of fear, control, and harm. Those signs that were listed in the other slides, these tell the courts what type of safety guards are necessary. And when there's a finding of family violence, it can change custody outcomes, especially leading to supervised visitation, limited access, or even restricted rights, because the priority of the court is to keep the children and the parents safe. The family courts are not just places where the disputes end. It's truly a place designed to give families a path forward, because balancing that financial stability is sometimes why a lot of people stay. I also want to leave you with understanding this. A court can issue orders, but safety really happens in the community. When a friend notices the signs, or when a neighbor speaks up, or when a sorority sister checks in, that is really where there is true progress. The family court is there to issue orders, but I tell people all the time, and I did in practice, it's nothing like common sense. When someone is trying to save a life, or there's an escalation of abuse, the court sometimes can have a slower process. And we're working through that in Harris County to make sure that when people need to get before a judge, they can. But I really want to leave people with understanding that their community, their friendships, and many times people that are there, never be afraid to go back to them, because many times these people will come to court and really provide the judge with what has been going on. If you see that there are advocates, please look to hiring, asking around, looking into lawyers who really believe in your safety and your future. So I just want to leave you all that safety is not selfish, and leaving is not failure. You've got to trust that the court is going to hear what you bring forth. And many times, even if you don't have a police report, bring forth the messages, the text, the recorded calls, bring these forth. And this way, a judge can truly step in and provide your children with the protection that they really need. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Judge Alexander. That was a beautiful overview of how families can stay safe when love becomes unsafe. And I love that you said being safe or having safety is not selfish. And so we love that. Thank you so much for your insight. And our last speaker for today will be Ms. Capriva Hutchinson. She is the Director of Family Violence Services High Risk Team at Harris County District Attorney's Office, Domestic Violence Bureau. With over 2 decades of experience, she has been a leading force in advocating for victims, survivors of families of violence since joining the District Attorney's Office in 1999. Capriva oversees a team of domestic violence advocates who play a crucial role in shaping trauma-informed services within the justice system. A respected expert in her field, Capriva has trained law enforcement officers, clergy, multidisciplinary professionals on the dynamics of domestic violence, and she has also served as an expert witness in courts, offering testimonies on the complexities of abuse and its impact on its victims. Her work reflects a deep commitment to justice, safety, and systematic change. Thank you so much for being with us tonight here, Ms. Hutchinson.
Thank you so much for having me. I was asked to speak on basics of the criminal justice system. I just want to start by saying domestic violence is not a her, him, or they problem. It's an us problem. Domestic violence is a public health issue. It not only affects the survivor, as we've heard some of the speakers say, it affects the immediate family, extended family, friends, sorors, neighbors, church members, co-workers, and the community. The DA's office has created the Domestic Violence Bureau to assist and better serve survivors of domestic violence. The Bureau consists of a multidisciplinary team of trauma-informed prosecutors, paralegals, investigators, social workers, advocates, and support staff to increase complainant safety and hold offenders accountable. We have a diverse team, and we have a team that speaks several languages. We support and we serve survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and stalking. The services that our advocates provide are emotional support, crisis intervention, protective order applications, criminal justice advocacy, court accompaniment, individualized safety planning, and referrals. So the cases come to our office in two different ways. We have walk-ins that come in and request protective orders. And a protective order is a lawsuit that is filed in the 280 of the district court. And it's to protect the family from dating and violence and stalking, harassment, and sexual assault. And they include in certain relationships to qualify. You have to be a family member, a household member, a dating relationship, or a previous dating relationship. And that would be for the family violence. For stalking, harassment, and sexual assault, there does not have to be a relationship. And we offer that service free of charge. If the protective order is granted, it is good for 2 years. It could be for a higher duration based on the judge's decision, but it's good for 2 years. And it says that the perpetrator cannot go within 200 feet of the applicant's home, work, school, or if the kiddos are on there, their daycare, and cannot harass them in a threatening or harassing manner, and cannot have a third party do that. These orders are good in all 50 states. And to get an order, applicants come into our office. We work on a first come, first served basis. They are assessed by a DVB advocate in our crisis risk team. And after the case is assessed, they can file an application, or we present the application, to one of 3 of our Domestic Violence Bureau protective order prosecutors. The prosecutor approves the case, and the case is filed in court. Now, the applicant must appear in court in order to obtain the order, and the respondent must be served. So once the respondent is served, the case goes to court, and in the court, if the respondent does not show up, then the applicant would have a default hearing, which is where one of our prosecutors would represent her, present the case, him or her, present the case, and the judge will make a decision on whether or not to grant that order. If that respondent shows up, the respondent can agree to the order after talking to our attorneys, or have that person's attorney talk to our attorneys, and that respondent can agree to the order. It would go before the judge, she signs it, and then she would give out the order and with some words for both parties. If the respondent does not agree to the order, they can have a contested hearing. And the contested hearing is where both sides gives their case, provides evidence, and the judge decides after hearing the case whether or not to grant it. And violation of the order is a criminal offense, and that charge is violation of a protective order. The other way a case can come to our office is if a criminal offense occurs, such as an assault. The suspect can be arrested on the scene, or the case can be investigated and presented to the DA's office. Once the charge is filed, the case is assigned to a court. Our office makes contact and tries to get protective measures put in place for, and in this instance, we call them complainants. This would be the applicants, the person needing the help. We would try and request maybe emergency protective orders, which are the same as it has the same wording as the protective orders, that the person cannot go within 200 feet of their home or their workplace, but these can only be granted in the criminal court once that defendant has been arrested. And since September the 1st of this year, it can be set to in order, it can be up for 61 days to 91 days. And if there's a deadly weapon involved, it can be 91 and up to, it can be at least 91 days and up to 121 days. We can also request conditions be put on a suspect, on the defendant's bond, such as no contact with the complainant and her family or his family, GPS monitoring, prohibiting him from alcohol use, drug use, and the use of weapons. And now we are shifting in our division, and I'm sorry, in our bureau, the Domestic Violence Bureau, we have a transformative shift going on. We are prioritizing high-risk cases for homicide prevention with the goal of intervening early and decisively in most dangerous situations and preventing escalation and saving lives. This shift is survivor-centered, system-driven, where accountability lies in the system and not the survivor. Whereas prior, we would have her come in, we would get her testimony. We needed her to testify in court. In some cases, that is still a case, but now we are trying to focus it more on where we're gathering the evidence and we are doing the prosecution and trying not to re-traumatize her as she has been. We have implemented collaborative conversations between survivors, advocates, and prosecutors at the earliest possible stage. And these trauma-informed dialogues are designed to keep survivor's voice at the center while reducing the burden of retelling the traumatic experiences multiple times. It accelerates our decision-making where we can make safety planning right on with that advocate, with that prosecutor, on the phone with her right then, talking to her about protective orders, talking to her about case strategy, and including her in the process throughout. This builds trust and transparency, allowing the survivor to feel heard, supported, and protected. This shift honors the courage of our survivors while ensuring they are supported and protected and never isolated. Harris County is setting a new standard for justice, once rooted in safety, healing, and hope. We remain vigilant and responsive to ensuring that no survivor is left behind. Thank you so much, and I am open to questions. If you have any additional questions about any of our services, my contact information is listed here on the slide, my phone, email, and I'm available. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Your information was impactful, very, very deep. So I'm ready to hear all the questions that our audience has for you. And I love the fact that your bureau has shifted to homicide prevention. That's an amazing shift. And now we're going to have our amazing chair of the Physical and Mental Health Committee come up to lead our question and answer portion of the evening. Danielle.
Good evening. Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Danielle White, and I would just like to say thank you to all of our amazing presenters for sharing such valuable information and insight with us today. Each of you has truly helped deepen our understanding of the important wellness topic. At this time, we'll transition into our Q&A portion of the webinar. If you haven't already, listeners, please drop your questions in the chat or the Q&A box on the webinar Zoom link, and we'll do our very best to address as many questions as possible. So let's begin with the first question. And this question is for Ms. Martine. It is, as a survivor, what gave you the strength to seek help and begin your healing journey?
Honestly speaking, I would say it was God, and everything aligned properly for me around the time. I was living paycheck to paycheck, and I remember having $40 to my name at that exact moment. I was reading a book. It was called Living Your Best Life Now by Pastor Joel Osteen. It was his very first book. And something in that book unlocked something inside of me to make me realize that I was worthy, that I deserved more. I didn't have vision or hope at the time. I didn't think I would live to see tomorrow. But literally, God unlocked something in me and shifted my mindset to make me realize that I deserve better. And this was not it for me, right? I had something to live for. And so I took that $40. And at that time, the apartment that I was living in required me to utilize their locksmith, and it was approximately $40 to change the locks. I changed the locks, packed up everything, left it on the porch, went and stayed at my parents' house, and they had no idea what was going on. I just said, "Hey, I'm coming over for a little bit with my son." And I stayed there for a few hours because I knew that if I stayed at the house, that my abuser at the time would try to attack me in some kind of way. So I went back home, and uh, I saw a dent in the door, like he tried to kick down the door. But after that point, I made a decision that I wanted my son to learn what healthy relationships or what healthy love looked like. And he was almost 3. And I remember time that at 3 years old is when kids start remembering things that are definitely most traumatic, right? Even before 3, if it's very traumatic, they will remember, but anything beyond 3, they will usually remember. So I made a decision not just for myself, but for my child. And it just took $40 and faith.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing your wisdom with us. And I hope the listeners are able to hear and relate in whatever possible manner. So I really just appreciate you even just showing that leaning on your faith is something that's huge as well, that can be able to push you to the next step.
Absolutely.
So our next
Absolutely.
question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Our next question is for our director here on the call, Ms. Capriva. What are some how are your programs working to reach underserved communities, particularly women of color?
And as mentioned several times, that is the highest number of complainants, applicants that we see. We go out and we teach in the communities. We are looking at piloting a program where we can go into the community and offer our services versus having the applicants come into downtown where it's confusing. It's hard to find parking. We are going to co-locate in the community. It's called our Protective Order Extension Program, where we know that there are higher needs and they are not able to get to us. So we are going to co-locate in community agencies so that we can reach some more of those clients.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So of course, be on the lookout, check out the website, make sure you are up to date on the different resources. As you can see, Harris County is making sure they're doing their due diligence to make sure to touch all the different communities, which is going to have me lean over to our amazing judge, Judge Alexander. From your perspective on the bench, what challenges do survivors face in the legal system when seeking protection or justice?
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful question. People they really face a fear and a distrust. Many times people have felt as if they've been failed by the system before, and that mistrust of the courts and of agencies, as well as not being believed, that is what is really challenging. Also, the fear of the unknown. Many times they are a fear of where will they live? How will they support their children? Will they lose custody if they leave? And so that challenge of the unknown and the access to the resources is really building up. And you can just tell that there is just a need for compassion, because what I strive to do is, while I don't know what the future holds, I do exist in a space of faith. And when you speak to people with a voice of faith and a voice of all will be well, the light is at the end of the tunnel, sunrise will come in the morning. When you speak to people in that type of way, that type of unknown, you can tell, really will be settled, and you can then get the information from the people that step into the court.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And of course, we have some more questions for you as well, but we're going to roll over to Miss Vincencia. Here's a question from Facebook. What is the best way to support a friend or family member who you suspect is in an abusive relationship? So maybe they haven't actually said it, but you kind of suspect something's going on.
That is an awesome question, and one that's definitely necessary, because one of the best things that you can do is to provide a space of empathy, to have a shoulder to lean on can mean the difference between life and death for lots of people who are in domestic violence situations. So showing up with a heart of curiosity, with a place of compassion, and just a willingness to listen. A lot of times, as who we are as Black women, we often feel that we have to put our capes on and fix it, but that's not the place. Just like Martine said before, we don't have to confront it. We just have to be there and be a connection so that when we have the knowledge of the resources that are available, and we've gotten a plethora of them tonight, that we can utilize that connection of empathy and compassion to allow, when they're ready, the space to listen so that they can actually utilize it. But if we're coming from a place of judgment and why are you doing this and you should know better and we didn't raise you this way, those components just leave someone to being in a place of isolation and not being able to hear the actual helpful information that's there. So making sure that we stay from that place of empathy, showing them that God's love through how we interact with him, and then being able to have that knowledge to provide the resources when they're ready to utilize them.
Thank you. That's some great insight. I hope everyone was taking notes on that. That's right. We need to just guide with love, because you never know, that one interaction could be the one stepping stone for them to actually leave their situation. So next question is for Ms. Capriva. What collaborative efforts with law enforcement, healthcare, as well as faith-based organizations have proven most effective in prevention or response?
So when we collaborate with as many people as we can, but we are part of the Harris County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, DVHRT team. And on that team, we have community partners, we have DV agencies, we have police agencies, we have probation, and we all come together to work on the cases and discuss the cases to provide the best plans to help the client with safety and to hold the offender accountable. But we do, like I said, we have partnerships with churches. We have partnerships. We go out into the churches, and we have tables at their community events. So we are out there, and if you want us at your location, reach out and we'll be happy to hook you up with the person to get us there.
Thank you. I like that a lot, because we do need all the support we can get, right, from every avenue. So Judge Alexander, what policy or procedure changes do you believe could better protect victims and hold offenders accountable?
That's a great question. Policy changes, and I hope I can kind of navigate policy changes within the court or policy changes within our system. I'll say this: housing and financial stability as a policy is really going to, where I see there's a change. Number two, early detection. I think that the speaker that shared about the teens and the youth and the mental abuse cycles, I thought that was phenomenal. Even I was taking notes there. Policy would be an early detection, early intervention, funding programs that are going into the schools and to the young that really know the signs between pressed love, living in your skin, I want to be in somebody's skin, but a really manipulative circumstance. I'd like to see that as a policy. And then stronger enforcement of protective orders and really kind of bringing back repeat offenders for compliance. That's something that it's hard for you all to control, but that's court to court. I find that when I have a red flag, I bring people back for compliance settings, because one thing that I notice about abusers, they will shape up for court. They're very good at masking it. They're very good at putting on a good face. They're very good at just fooling the masses. So no. Every 30 days, I want to see you. Come on. You're coming back to court. Next setting. And a lot of times I do that because A, I need you to be paying your child support. Okay. B, I need to know where she's living. C, I need to know that you were not breaking any rules, because I have no problem holding you in contempt of these injunctions. So I find it as a policy, bringing people in for compliance settings kind of curbs when I see a very big red flag. I mean, I have a lot of policy issues, but I hope that names it. Lastly, I'll say one that's a little taboo, but I just want to put it out there. As a policy, I can tell that the courts are navigating when a person is abused, should the abuser still get visitation, right? Because there's this pain of if you went so far as to abuse a parent, are you in the best interest of a child? And that I think that a lot of us are working through by being trauma informed and learning and understanding that if you are a child that is 5, 6, 7, and you witnessed a partner choke another partner, a mother, how healthy is it for you to then have access to the children? And so I hope that answers the question. I kind of threw out a lot of different policies, some that the courts can control, some that I would like to see in voting from our legislatures. I hope I threw out enough.
No, you absolutely did. And you actually touched on something that's very important, why possibly survivors or victims do not leave. It's because they want to make sure they have those resources, right? Especially when it comes to child support, or they just stay because they're able to see exactly, or just abuse me, don't touch my children, right? And so we just want to make sure that, of course, we have people in the courtroom like you, as well as have directors like Ms. Capriva, who's going to make sure that those things are in place. And so thank you for even pointing out those some important factors as well. So Ms. Vincencia, what role does trauma-informed care play in helping survivors rebuild their sense of safety and identity?
Wow, that's a great question because being trauma informed allows you to interpret and evaluate behaviors that you see. So when someone experiences a trauma, the effects of it may not be seen right away, but they can continue on through relationships, the way they show up in the world. It can increase anxiety, it can increase depression. There's so many aspects of it. So when we're trauma informed, we label things more correctly than we do when we're not. So, trauma can mimic lots of other mental health challenges. Trauma can mimic things like ADHD. Trauma can mimic autism, spectrum disorder. And so, when we come from a trauma informed place, we can look at what's happened to a person more profoundly to understand better the impacts of it. And from a clinician standpoint, better treat those symptoms. And it often can help eliminate, especially for our kids, some of the labels that are put on them within the education system that are unfair and sometimes don't lead them to the best educational experiences. So having that trauma-informed lens can help impact them, not just only within the community, but within the educational system as well.
Thank you. That is so true. That is very true, actually, as a therapist myself. So, Ms. Martine, the next question is for you. And if you can share, if you feel comfortable, what message would you share with someone who feels trapped in an abusive relationship but is afraid to leave?
So yes, I'm very transparent. So what I would say is that fear is real, right? I do understand that emotion, that feeling that you have. However, don't allow that to keep you in a place where you are unsafe, where there's instability that may potentially cause your life, right? So just because you have fear, it doesn't mean you have to stay. I know I was still afraid when I made the decision to leave. I wasn't sure what the outcome would look like, but I knew for one thing for sure is that I couldn't stay there anymore. And you are a lot of times afraid of the unknown, right? And you don't know what tomorrow may look like or what the other side may look like, but the grass is greener on the other side. I can assure you that. Doesn't mean the transition process may not be easy, especially based on the circumstances.
Uh-oh, we had some technical difficulties there with her, but as you can see, she did
Oh,
share an
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm so sorry. The
It's okay.
Wi-Fi. Okay, so it depends on the circumstances and the situation, right? If there's children involved or pets or whatever may have you, right? But take that leap of faith, prepare a safety plan, get some supporters, some friends by your side to prepare to leave the right way, because I don't know this exact exact situation and circumstance. So I want to make sure that you are safe first and foremost, and you have the right people by your side to help you exit properly. And so the fear does not go away overnight. I'm not going to lie to you. It doesn't. But you have to do the work and go through the healing journey and the process. And it does, and it will get better.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and giving that insight. This is going to be the last round of questions. So we're going to start off with Ms. Capriva. What is some information that you would like to see that possibly the survivor or victim that will be presented into the office? So if it's pictures or if it's maybe just keeping a journal, is there things that you would just like to actually have them present when they're coming into your office?
Yes, first of all, they would need an ID because we do have them sign in documentation. So if they have evidence, it helps the case, but they do not have to have evidence for us to accept the case. It makes it a stronger case. So pictures, text messages, Facebook shots, screenshots, any of those things are helpful if they have witnesses. So if they don't have the evidence, but you told someone on that date and they documented it for you, that's helpful as well.
Thank you. Judge Alexander, if someone has to come into your courtroom and they have to repeatedly see the assailant, the person who is causing the abuse, how can you provide protection in that mode for they don't have to continue to be re-victimized?
Thank you so much. That's a phenomenal question. One reason why I really celebrate our court staff of being trauma informed is we have two amazing bailiffs. What we will do is sometimes divide people within an associate judge's chambers. I have access to smaller chambers and a larger chambers. So we will do things like have one person leave first, another person leave second. Number two, we will also have the bailiff be an escort right by the person that I am aware that is trauma, that has been induced by trauma. Third, one of my favorite is Zoom. I will allow, if I know that someone has been truly going through, and I allow this for my CPS cases as well, if they have gone through a very traumatic experience, I will allow them to appear via Zoom, and they'll just be in the room. They can see the cameras at which the other party is there, and the other party cannot see them or their background. I turn the screen to face the bench, and I'll hear testimony from there. A lot of times, this really comes to having a really good attorney or using the victim's aid. We have phenomenal attorneys who are with the victim's aid, ABDA. And what I like is these attorneys know in the first 2 minutes to really navigate. I am here on behalf of someone who has sustained mental, physical, financial, and painful abuse. And they get that out quickly. And they lead with it. So that way, from the bench's perspective, it is all hands on deck, from my bailiffs to my clerk to my associate judge, for the protection of that person who has gone through the things that they've gone through.
Wow, that is amazing. That's some amazing insight. I had no idea. And just to think, everyone who's on this call, think about how amazing that we have a judge that's being proactive to make sure that even if you are in this type of situation, you're going to be protected as you walk the hallways or as you're in your home, making sure you receive the proper justice that you need. So that's why it's important to make sure you know who's on your ballot. So thank you so much for providing that insight. And our next question is for Miss Vincentia. I said it, Miss Vincentia Wright. This is to be directed towards you. This is from Facebook. How can schools or youth programs be better equipped to educate young people about healthy relationships, consent, and the signs of abuse?
Oh, that's such a great question. So, as a former school counselor, this is so near and dear to my heart. And so, we have to be aware of laws that have been passed, especially in the state of Texas. Senate Bill 12. Senate Bill 12 has, I'm not going to say it's a barrier, but parents have to consent for school counselors to provide this type of information. Parents have to sign consent so that counselors can talk to them about healthy and unhealthy relationships. So with that caveat, it is so important that our parents are involved in campus strategic plans. Every school campus has to have a domestic violence policy for students on that campus. It is super important that our parents are aware of what that policy is so that they can advocate for that in the community and help campus staff and teachers be able to model what that looks like and to be able to provide the resources for their students. And the second thing is to continue to be advocates within the community to make sure that parents actually sign consents so that our students can be better educated within our school system, because that's where they spend most of their time. And we want to make sure that they're utilizing it and getting the information that they need. And as far as youth groups, it's a barrier, more of a barrier for those youth groups to come inside of schools now. But however, collaboration is key. It is so important that we partner up with community-based organizations, that we recognize how together we can stand taller and how together we can help promote more beneficial information to help continue to reduce this stigma. So you see these beautiful women here on this panel tonight. Reach out. Let's collaborate. Let's continue to make sure that we are pushing out the right information so that our kids are actually being educated by people who understand and who know and love them, and not just TikTok.
Absolutely. Not just TikTok, not just social media. That is absolutely correct. Thank you so much. And last but definitely not least, Ms. Martine, this question is for you. What is one action each of us can take after today's conversation to make a difference? And what is one thing that we can shift the culture from silence and shame to safety and support?
Great question. So I would say that this is a call to action for every single one of us on this webinar tonight. Now that you have the tools, the resources, and the information, the knowledge, the know-hows, the red flags, take that and bring it back to your dinner table. Take that and bring these conversations to your churches, to your children, to your families, nephews, nieces, aunts, sisters, whoever it may be. Talk about it. Let's talk about what is domestic violence. I learned about this today. Have you heard about this? Are you aware? Let's have these type of discussions and normalize it. And from there, we can take the steps forward. Maybe it could be something like Ms. Wright just stated, organizing together, right? And say, hey, can you come speak at this session? Or can you come speak at my church or at my school, in my classroom? Where are you located? What connections do you have? Who's in your network? And how can we partner to help spread this information further?
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Thank you to Judge Alexandria. Thank you to Ms. Capriva. Thank you to Ms. Vincentia, as well as thank you to Ms. Martine. We thank you all for your thoughtful questions and engaging discussion during our Q&A session. We really, truly appreciate each of our speakers and every participant for joining us today and contributing to such an important topic. Before we close, I want to take a moment to remind us why conversations like this matter. Domestic violence is not just a private issue, it's a community concern. Each of us has the power to create safety, support, and healing by recognizing the signs, speaking up, and extending compassion without judgment. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, help is available 24 hours a day. You can contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. That is 1-800-799-7233, or visit thehotline.org for confidentiality support. Let's continue to check on one another, believe survivors, and work together to end the cycle of violence. At this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Cushenberry, who is our second vice president, who will share our final remarks and close out today's webinar.
I am not sure why I'm not showing up on screen.
It's okay.
I'm not sure why I'm not showing up, but good evening. I am Dr. Katrina Cushenberry, the second vice president for the Houston Alumni Chapter. And I want to sincerely thank our panelists and speakers once again for the vital information they've shared tonight, helping us to shine a light on the pervasive issue of domestic violence. We recognize that for African American women, domestic violence is far more than an individual tragedy. It's a profound health crisis fueled by systemic inequities. And the statistics are sobering and undeniable. Over 40% of Black women will face physical violence, sexual violence, or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. And this rate is significantly higher than for women in other racial groups, drastically escalating the risk and complexity of their survival. And if, like me, you weren't fully aware of just how widespread teen dating violence is, then I know you can appreciate the information presented, especially if you have young people in your life. It really resonated with me because I have like 15 nieces and nephews and then 15 great nieces and nephews. So this is information I really want to share with them so that they can share with their friends and spread the word, as so many of you have already said. Our hope is that tonight's webinar inspires a firm commitment from all of us to be a supportive, non-judgmental presence within our own circles. Know the resources, understanding that providing genuine support and access to help can be the single most important action that saves a life. Ending domestic violence is a community responsibility, one that requires us to prioritize the safety and well-being of all survivors. If anything you heard or saw on the screen this evening resonated with you, we would love to hear from you and we welcome your feedback. Thank you again for coming. Thank you for the valuable information that has been given. Hope you all have a wonderful evening. Where's my picture?